Finally, let's cut to the chase. Cassandra King is one of our guardian angel authors here in Midtown's Litland. She's the author of Making Waves, The Sunday Wife, The Same Sweet Girls, and tonight we celebrate her latest title, Queen of Broken Hearts, a novel that Fannie Flagg has called a wonderful and uplifting tale full of romance and surprises along the way. King has taught writing on the college level, conducted corporate writing seminars, worked as a human interest reporter for a Pelham, Alabama weekly newspaper. Next to writing, her favorite pastime is cooking. A native of L.A., that's Lower Alabama, she lives on the South Carolina coast with her husband, novelist Pat Conroy. And she's a much faster writer than her husband, much to Mr. Conroy's dismay. Friends and fans and special guests, let's welcome the always delightful Cassandra King.
If I were not a much faster writer than Mr. Conroy, I would not be here tonight talking about my new book. I would have been here 12 years ago when his latest novel came out. I just want to thank everyone for being here. Before I begin, and I want to introduce a few people in the audience and so forth. But I do this every time I've been on book tour, mostly since the book came out March the 6th. It was official. This is my last official event, but the book tour was over a few weeks ago. But every time I go somewhere and speak to a group like this, I always want to start out by saying thank you so much for going to the trouble to be here. I mean this from the bottom of my heart, because I get out in traffic, and a lot of times when I'm coming to these events, I think to myself, I would not go see me for anything. I probably would not go see Kevin Costner. You know, I just don't think I can do it, and it means so much to me that all of you came out tonight. And I especially want to thank the sponsor. I didn't quite see, you're dressed like a bank person, so I should have known. Didn't quite see. I was sitting in the back of the room, didn't quite see, but thank you so much. That's a great thing to do, and it's also wonderful to be here when the Georgia Literary Arts Symposium is starting up. So that's a big honor as well. Now, I wanted to mention a few people that are here tonight, and I always hate to do that because I'm afraid I'll leave somebody out. So I'm just kind of doing groupings because I have friends and relatives and groupies and, not really, I'm teasing, and people who have been in previous books, people who are in this book, and so forth. So I just want to acknowledge them. I won't embarrass them by asking them to stand, but I may say just kind of wave or something like that, okay? Okay, so I have, I jotted these down so I try to remember them. One that kind of fits into a lot of these categories is my sister Nancy, and with her, a group of my groupies, they call themselves the Talladega Mooners. And now there is a reason for that, because there's a scene in this book that explains how they got the title of the Mooners. So if the Mooners and Nancy would kind of wave their hands, maybe they won't moon anyone tonight. Okay, relatives. I have my beloved Uncle Rex and my cousin Jim and Judy, and I haven't seen them yet. So where are Jim and Judy? Oh, you're sitting right there by Rex and Jake. So glad y'all are here. It's great. Did I leave any relatives out? Okay. And then former book titles, The Same Sweet Girls. Where are you? I have 3 in the back there. Better all be sporting their pens. Okay. Now, and we have this a same sweet boy with us. He's our court jester. Okay. Oh, and especially, I just almost skipped over this part. I apologize. I'm going to talk about her in a little bit, and she's already been introduced, but Margot Swan. And any of the other women from Visions Anew, I wasn't sure if anyone else was able to make it. Thank y'all. We'll talk a little more about Visions Anew in just a minute. And the significance. It's great to be here, and it's great to have you here. And one thing that I like about coming to Atlanta for events is I am in with my people. You know, I'm with Southerners, fellow and sister Southerners, because one of the things that I have had difficulty with in writing my books is with my Southern dialect. And so I finally decided that what determines a Southern writer is not so much what you write about, your settings, and so forth. It's more the relationship that you have with your editor. My editor is, of course, 12 years old, because they all are in publishing nowadays. And, you know, she's just this darling girl that looks like she just stepped off the set of Sex and the City or something. And so we've had these discussions back and forth about some of the things in my books. And I sort of jotted down some of these tonight to let you know whether or not you are a Southern writer, and you know any Southern writers. If your editor has ever asked you a double wide what, it's kind of the same thing as trying to explain to her, no, pickup truck is redundant. What she has more trouble with, though, I think, is no point in saying iced tea. It's a Coke. It is not a soda pop. Now, I will call it a soda. I have gotten sophisticated enough since I've been living near Atlanta, the most sophisticated place in the South, to say soda rather than, everything being a Coke. But I just cannot make myself say soda pop. And if I did, I don't think I could ever show my face in Pinkard, Alabama again. But the one that I had the most trouble explaining to her was light bread, because she wrote in the margin, did you mean like wheat bread, light rye maybe? No, it's light bread. My father refuses to eat at a Chinese restaurant because they don't serve light bread. They don't serve bread of any kind. But he's 92 years old. He can refuse to do, whatever he wants to at this age. But we did try to take him to eat at a Chinese restaurant. And he said, "What do you mean you don't have light bread?" So he pulls out his wallet and tells the waitress if she'd run across the street to the Winn-Dixie and get him a loaf of bread, he'd pay for it. Another thing with my editor is that she has tried to convince me that no one in the South is really named Bubba. Some of my names she does not care for. And I don't want any of them really to be caricatures. So because of that, I really could never use my father's best friend when I was growing up was Daddy Boy. I didn't know his name until I was, 20 years old. His son was Bill Boy. His wife is Bubby, and he has a daughter named Dixie, of course, I knew several Bubbas, unfortunately. I also knew Fella Bug, June Bug, Peanut, squirrely. Just, we have so many names. So one of my favorite is three sisters in Aliceville, Alabama, who are known as Big Sister, Baby Sister, and Sister Woman. But I wouldn't try to use that either. Some of our phraseology, there's a little problem with. I get emails sometimes from readers about eras in the book. People are so kind to point this out to you. It's one thing you can count on. They always do that. And it does, as a former English teacher, it does bother me as well. But they do, there'll be some errors always. And sometimes what happens is the book is sent to me, and I'm supposed to look over it one final time before it goes to the copy editor and then to press, and I am so sick of it. I cannot look at it again. I will just say, whatever, send it on. So it was with surprise when I had to look over this book for, believe it or not, the paperback issue. They start working on that pretty soon, and this time I tried to be a little careful and so forth and check. No, I take that back. It was not for this book. It was for the Same Sweet Girls when I was looking that over for the paperback issue. So I was trying to check it very carefully. I had to reread something. Then I had to get my manuscript out to see why there was something about this phrase that didn't work. And they had changed when I said, I had a character say, I didn't go to hurt your feelings. They changed it. I didn't come here to hurt your feelings. And, there's a subtle difference with that. But they just was sure, what I figure is that I didn't mean to say I didn't go to do that. But I did go to, anyway. But then, one of the main things I really, can sympathize and understand, the Southern vernacular. It can be hard for you if you're not used to it, because I never really could explain to my editor that, yeah, it's true, pea turkey is a noun unless it comes before squad and then it's an adjective. So, what I wanted to do tonight is just take a little time to talk to you a bit about my latest book, Queen of Broken Hearts, and how it came about, and I have a very brief reading, but mostly I'm interested in questions and answers. Matter of fact, if I run my mouth too long, I won't even do the reading, but it's just a couple of paragraphs. It has an Atlanta basis in its origins, and so because of that, whenever I come back to Atlanta, it just makes me, remember again how this book came about in a rather serendipitous sort of way. I had contract for and was about to start work on my new book after the Same Sweet Girls, and had planned a different book than Queen of Broken Hearts. But at the time I had a family member, my sister, going through a very difficult divorce. And I was thinking about how I myself had been divorced several years earlier. Of course, so many of my friends and other family members had, but for some reason I think this hit me particularly hard. And I thought it was a really heartbreaking story and part of our family history and so forth. So in thinking about this, I was thinking, we all go through these things. We go through them when we experience them ourselves, and then we have to go through them again when someone we love experiences them. And it's almost like that can be as painful for us in some ways, or maybe even more so, is when we do these sort of things like this that happen to us in our lives that are traumatic to us. So I decided I wanted to write on this subject. I wanted my next book to be about mostly divorce. I was going to I did not want it to be a divorce book, quote, but a book about loss, because this is a loss of someone we love, is something that we all experience. I mean, there's no way you can get through life without experiencing, the loss of someone dear to you. And so we're kind of forced with the situation and that kind of heartbreak to go on. At some point, we have to go on with our lives. And it's the healing that I wanted to look at in this book. But I couldn't get a grasp on how I wanted to do it, because one of the main things I kept saying, there have been a lot of books written about women going through a divorce, or men, focused on the person going through the divorce and how they recover. And, very excellent books that I've read myself. Plenty of these, so I didn't want it to be just another one of those. I wanted a different approach, or I didn't want to do it. But I couldn't come up with anything, and I started on my tour and didn't really have time to think about it much at that point. Anyway, this was for the Same Sweet Girls. I came to Atlanta. Mercer has these author luncheons, and I was signing a book for a woman that told me that she knew one of the Same Sweet Girls, and we started chatting. And I asked her what she did. And she said that she had started a nonprofit organization to help women who are going through a divorce. And I was really surprised at this, because I thought to myself and said to her, I want to send my sister to this. She was doing these recovery retreats. So I said, I want to send my sister to one of those. So stick around, let me get information from you. It was when I was riding home from this event at Mercer that it hit me. I have been handed what I was looking for as a new and unique focus for the book, because I was thinking, just think of all the stories of heartbreaking and healing that this woman must see. It's Margot, who's in the audience tonight. And just in thinking about that, I thought to myself, that's what the new book's going to be about. So I decided that this divorce therapist who conducts divorce recovery retreats would be the queen of broken hearts. And that's where the title comes from. Since I got to make it up, except based on Margot's idea, and I talked to Margot about it. I visited one of her retreats, I think, or a couple of them, and saw how they were run and so forth. I was thinking, I would want this to be set in a place that is really a part of the whole story, the setting, the healing aspect of the story. Because setting in each of my books, I think, is almost like a character in the book. So it's a very important element of fiction for me. I decided on Fairhope, Alabama, and have met a lot of people who come up to me afterwards and said, now, when were you raised? You were raised in Fairhope, and blah, blah, blah. No, wasn't raised in Fairhope, but just spent a lot of time there. It's a beautiful, beautiful spot, but I like the idea, the history of it. If you're not familiar with it, you have to buy the book, read, find out. But the history just happened to fit in with the theme in some ways of the book. Starting out on a new venture and the risk and so forth that you take with this. And then the setting as being beautiful and peaceful and a good place for healing. So I had my main character, divorce therapist, Clare, and she conducts these divorce recovery retreats. She has been given a plot of land by her former mother-in-law, and this is the way the book begins, is when she is given this land below, or it'd be south of Fairhope, near Weeks Bay, to have a permanent site for her recovery retreats. I I did not want this book to be totally, I didn't want it to be a downer. Instead, I wanted it to focus on the healing aspect. So I thought one thing I could do in order to do that was to have some characters that sort of brought some life to the rather depressing subject, if you think about it that way. And so I have Zoe Catherine, for one. The former mother-in-law is one of these real eccentric characters. Her boyfriend, Cooter. They're both in their 70s, and they I think, are both pretty eccentric. Fairhope's noted for its eccentric characters, by the way. So I was kind of, typecasting there in some ways. I wanted also the story to have a lot to do with loneliness and the different ways in which we seek the connection of others in order to fill this lonely spot that we all have, I think, somewhere within us. So Cooter and Zoe are in their 70s, but Cooter's decided that he's ready for them to get married because he's tired of being by himself. And so this is a theme that you will also see. My Queen of Broken Hearts, Clare, the therapist, has had her own share of heartbreak and loneliness. She is a widow, and even though she's a therapist and knows better, she hasn't really come to grips with the loss of her husband. And her loneliness is part of what she deals with, and part of the reason that she has two suitors in her life now, two men who are sort of courting her, and one of them's an old family friend, and the other one is a sea captain, a Yankee sea captain who's moved into town and bought the marina. So we have all these sorts of things. There's things in the book about birds. There's a lot about birds because the landing, the place where the retreat site will be, is a bird sanctuary that Zoe Catherine has operated. And Zoe Catherine names all of her birds. So on the cover we have Genghis Khan. It's a peacock. He's one of the characters in the book. And so are some of the other. She names her peacocks after flamboyant historical characters like Catherine the Great and the Queen of Sheba and Genghis Khan and so forth. She names her pheasants after literary characters like Falstaff and Rhett Butler and Scarlett O'Hara, and her ducks are politicians. So, since I'm speaking in this area, I can tell you this, and most of you'll know what I'm talking about. I did have in here that she named one of her ducks Big Jim Folsom. He was a former lover of hers. And my editor did not want me to keep this in there. She said, now was a real governor of Alabama. And I said, yeah. And she said, well, I don't know if we should say, that he was a former lover, and so forth. And, well, no, we really shouldn't, because I bet you Big Jim Folsom didn't have any lovers or, do anything he shouldn't have done. So, but the birds and the bird sanctuary and so forth become a metaphor for a lot of the happenings in the book as well. There is some mythology that comes into play in the book. I have a labyrinth, and this located at the retreat site has something a bit to do with the sort of exploring the theme as well. So I I always hope that whenever I write a book, that in some way it will speak to a reader. I think that's all any of us who write really hope for. You take this almost like your baby, your child. Have a couple of writers here who can verify. There may be more than one, but Jack and Rob. And so it's a difficult thing to let go of, you know, to you put yourself in a vulnerable spot in a lot of ways by exposing some of your philosophies and your thoughts and so forth in writing. But I have had several people who have come up to me at signings, and one woman, literally with tears streaming down her face, most recent signing I had, said to me, "You wrote this book for me." And I think that this is why we write. I think this is certainly why I write, because there's this need, this longing to connect with readers, and that's another reason I love to come to things like this and meet those of you. So I hope that you'll stay around afterwards. If you get a book signed, I'll be glad to sign a book for you, or at least say hello, because I always really enjoy meeting readers. Reading saved my life, I think, in a lot of ways when I was growing up. Rather isolated on a farm, way out nowhere in the sticks of Alabama. And if it had not been for reading, and then when I was old enough to start doing it, writing, I don't know that I could have survived. You know, it's just it's something that's a treasure, and being in this place reminds all of us of that. Okay, I'm going to read just a brief part, so you get just a little feel of the book and the theme and so forth. The first person narrator is Clare Ballinger, the divorce therapist, and she's talking about part of the retreats that she has added to the retreats that have made the retreats somewhat controversial. The truth is, the asunder ceremony is the aspect of the retreats I've been determined to downplay. The ceremony has been a significant part from the beginning, but I never intended for it to be the main focus. When the article came out about the retreats and I was on talk shows and gave interviews, it was the ceremony that got them tagged as both innovative and controversial. I was appalled when a Birmingham newspaper began their coverage with the headline, "Divorce Therapist Casts Marriage Asunder with Reverse Wedding Ceremony." I knew what would happen. Following the article, my receptionist was swamped with phone calls, and we had as many cancellations as inquiries from those intrigued by the idea. The editorial pages of the Birmingham paper quoted religious fanatics, predecessors of the letter that would make its appearance in the Fairhoper several months later. Even less fanatical religious groups expressed distaste at the idea because in most denominations, marriage and baptism are the only two sacred sacraments. Who did I think I was, outraged clergy demanded, to perform such a thing, mocking a holy ritual of the church? After the flurry died down, I determined to put the ceremony back into its proper perspective. I came up with the idea for the asunder ceremony while doing research on wedding customs for the first retreat. I found countless ceremonies having to do with getting married, from jumping the broom to stomping a glass, but none for getting unmarried. Rituals are a crucial part of all aspects of our lives, from momentous occasions such as religious observations, graduations, holidays, and to more everyday affairs such as birthdays and sporting events. One of the most ritualized parts of our lives is in the way a death is observed, with funerals or wakes or memorial service being so necessary for closure. Ritual is not merely important, I concluded, it's essential. No wonder we have so much trouble when a marriage ends. Marriage is one of the most important steps in everyone's lives, a celebration unlike any other. Kingdoms have been built, countries split, wars started, heads rolled, religions formed, dynasties established, all as a result of marriage. But where are the rituals marking the end of a marriage? Signing papers in a lawyer's office hardly qualifies, neither does the whack of a judge's gavel. Most of my clients tell me they made up their own ceremonies, usually unsavory things such as getting drunk, stoned, or laid, or I should have added this, maybe mooning your ex. In response to what I saw as a real need in the process of recovery, I created a brief ritual for acknowledging the end of a marriage, called it the Asunder Ceremony, and added it to the first retreat. Although the retreat participants are strongly urged to participate, the Asunder Ceremony isn't a requirement despite the insinuations of the newspaper articles. Instead, it's the grand finale of the Saturday talks, workshops, and presentations. The ceremony is on the schedule right before folk dancing, which is the way we end Saturday evenings. At first, I was surprised to see the participants who wept so profusely at the ceremony go on to dance with such great abandonment afterward. Then it hit me. But of course, how many weddings have I attended where everyone was dragged onto the dance floor, from toddlers to the very elderly? Nowadays, a wedding is one of the few occasions where dancing is encouraged as a means of emotional release. Over time, the dancing after the ceremony became as much a part of it as the ritual itself. So, that just gives you a little idea of some of the things trying to deal with in the book. I'd like to see now if I have questions, because I want to know what it is that you would like to hear more about, either from myself or Margot has consented to answer some questions as well. Yes, ma'am. Okay, the question was, how long did it take to write The Queen of Broken Hearts? This book, about 2 years. I like to have longer on a book, and I am about to start my next book now, so that I will have a little bit longer on this, because I like to take my time. I know I have a lot of writer friends that turn out a book a year, and I do not see how they do it. Just absolutely could not do it. I have to do a lot of pre-writing in my head, and that takes a while too. So before I actually sit down and start the writing process, I've thought out most of it. And I like to have a couple of years. Yes, ma'am. Oh, I'm so glad you asked that. The question was, what is light bread? Okay. I think, dare I say, country people? Yeah. Country people used to call just white store-bought bread light bread. And it was, where I came from, it was colonial bread. A Wonder Bread. But it's, in our house, I think it just meant store-bought bread, and it was white, marshmallowy, you know. That stuff has so much preservatives in it that you can leave it out for a month and it will not mold, I promise you. So you made tomato sandwiches with it, and banana sandwiches, and, you know, other things. I had an uncle from Chicago who said one time, "I cannot believe you people eat banana sandwiches." Do you eat apple sandwiches? I mean, but not strawberry sandwiches? I said, no, but pineapple sandwiches are good. But I'm glad you asked that. I make the assumption that everyone knows what light bread is. Yes, ma'am.
You said you started out as a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Was it high school or
College.
college?
Mm-hmm.
How did you go? Have you always written, or what made you make the decision to go from teaching into writing?
Okay, the question was, how did I go from writing, teaching to writing, or what made me do so? I love teaching. It really is very, very rewarding, especially teaching writing, teaching composition. One of the things that I discovered when I was teaching is that most students hate writing. And that was a surprise to me because I always loved writing so much. It was, my favorite. Well, English was my favorite subject in, school and, of course, reading and so forth. So I love to write. But when I discovered how many students hated, well, they don't read, or mine didn't start with, but then they hate to write. Now, I tried to do things to make it more interesting for them. Like I had them write their research paper on themselves. They had to look up their Myers-Briggs and, do all this research and this kind of stuff. And I was the only one, I think, that they didn't mind doing their research paper for because they got to write about their favorite person. So I've always written as long as I can remember. I love to write. And I think so many writers, and I know at least one here who might agree with me, writing is our passion, and teaching pays the bills, So, so many teachers, especially English teachers, are frustrated writers or wish that we had more time, to write. It's awfully hard when you teach college composition classes because so many essays. And teachers nowadays are, I think, so overloaded with students and so forth that you really have a lot. I spent all weekends just about grading essays. So. Yes, sir.
What is the main conflict point of your story? When and where? How do you introduce it?
Okay. That's a neat question. I don't think I've been asked that before. What is the main conflict of the story, and when and where do I introduce that? It's something we used to talk about in writing class when I was teaching. When I was teaching creative writing, because we would say, okay, you're got a character. Your character is walking in the woods. The character, nothing is going on. All of a sudden, a bear comes along. All right, so there's your conflict. What's the bear in your book? This one it's more, there's some obvious conflict with characters. It starts out with conflict with the therapist and the husband of her best friend. She, when people that we love marry someone that we don't love, it can cause problems. And she has that situation. She has her best friend's husband is one of these good old boys, and she's always kicking him out and bringing him back in and this kind of stuff. And of course, as a therapist, she's appalled by that. She has a lot of inner conflict with her own healing process, which she hasn't really gone through, and her grief she hasn't really dealt with. There's also this with her mother-in-law, her former mother-in-law, was estranged from her own son, and when he died, this was never really resolved. So there's as to a lot of conflict in the book. I was trying to think when it's first. I think it's introduced on the first page just about it, because I have my main character realizing that she's about to have a run-in with her best friend's husband if she doesn't get out of the coffee shop where she is in a hurry.
How do you plot your story? Do you start with an outline, or does it just grow as you go?
Okay. The question was how do I plot a story. I do not outline. I never could outline. Used to, we had to turn in an outline, like with a research paper, something. I'd write my paper first and then, outline it and turn it in. I always cheated on that. That's why I didn't make my students outline when I was teaching. But even having said that, I can't just sit down and start writing from nothing. So, as I was saying a minute ago about it being, forming in my head, I do a lot of pre-writing and forming the ideas in my head. And so I pretty well, when I start, I do keep a little notebook where I jot down, I keep an index notebook, and the index will be each character in the book's name. And I will put down facts about, this character, just any little story or something that I want to add, things like that, so that I'm pretty well, by the time I start writing, I'm pretty well, I have a plot going in my mind. I definitely know how it's going to end. Now, I do take some side streets as I'm doing this. In The Same Sweet Girls, I had an unexpected romance between a couple of my characters that I didn't plan on when I started it at all. And, not to mention any names. So occasionally that can happen, but basically I just had it kind of plotted out in my mind, but I do not do my outline. Yes.
You know what your crisis is going to be.
Pardon?
You know what your crisis is.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And also, how do you go about making your setting as strong a character as you do?
Okay, I forgot to repeat the question, so I'm saying this. So the question was, so you know what your crisis is going to be in the story. Yes, I almost always know. If that may change a little bit, but I basically know, the main crisis and the resolution. The resolution may be that it's not going to be resolved, but, that this is the way it's going to be dealt with. And the setting. How do you make the setting such a strong, almost like a character in the story? I think one of the things that you just about have to do, and that I may be totally wrong on this, and well, I'm sure I'm not maybe. I was about to say you really have to be familiar with your setting in order to do that. But I know there've been some, great books written by much. I mean, maybe I need to say I have to be really familiar with the setting for it to work for me. But some really great writers have written about places I don't think maybe they've even been, and that you just really have to have an amazing imagination to do that. So it would be difficult for me, but be very, very familiar with the setting and have it set at that place for a reason. That probably would be another really important part, rather than just setting it anywhere, have your setting serve a purpose in the plot of the story.
Who's your favorite
favorite contemporary writer. That changes a lot for me. I never am able to just answer specific, because it might be somebody this week and then I'll get on a different. I remember when I discovered Anita Shreve, and I was just blown away. I just kept reading all her stuff. So at that time, I would say Anita Shreve, Sue Kidd, Richard Russo, different writers that I've discovered, and then I can't get enough of them. Anne Rivers Siddons goes way back when I first read, a long time ago, her books. I think she's amazing. So it sort of depends on what I read a lot. Really, I read a lot more nonfiction than I do fiction. I'm not sure why, but I always have. Okay, then I saw a hand over here.
Explain what you mean by prewriting.
Okay, explain what I mean by prewriting. To me, that's the process that you go through before you actually sit down and start. It was a dark and stormy night, your first line of your book. Because I don't think that anyone, maybe I'm totally wrong about this, just sits down and, then lets it flow from there. That would be hard for me to imagine. It might be fun just to sit down and start writing, a story about anything you can think of to write. But for me, it would be very productive. So prewriting is whatever you do in the process. I did a lot of thinking, as I was saying, about what I wanted to do in this book before I ever came up with characters, setting, and so forth. So that's how I define prewriting. Now, other writers might say that it does involve a lot of notes. I do research. On each of my books, I've had to do research about something or other, even if it's not much. Like in my first book, I didn't have that much research, but I had to do a little bit on, starts out with a scene in a funeral parlor, and backstage of, I have a beautician fixing the hair of her former teacher who had just died, and so I had to find out a little bit about, and beauticians, how she would do this and so forth. So I've done a lot of research on sort of subtopics in the book.
How has being married to a writer affected your writing?
How has being married to a writer affected my writing? Actually, it has had an effect on my writing because had encouraged me. I had my second book, the Sunday Wife, is autobiographical in a lot of ways, and sort of came out of my journals. And I did not think I would ever be comfortable writing about anything personal. My nickname in the family is Helen Keller because I'm a real private person in a lot of ways. Pat says, I see nothing, hear nothing, say nothing. So, I don't know. I keep a lot of thoughts to myself maybe, but I just, especially that period of my life when I was a Sunday wife myself, I didn't think I'd ever want to write about that. And I had another manuscript at that point with an agent after my first book. And when Pat was asking me about my life before as a Sunday wife, he said, I'm surprised you haven't written about that. And I said, no, I couldn't ever write anything that personal. And I'm saying that to the wrong person, of course, you know. And so he said, that's what you need to write. The most personal things are what you need to write. So, but it's impacted. But it's also been, it's been very nice living. I think sometimes that all writers should be married to each other, because it's been very nice living with someone who understands the solitude that a writer needs, the reflective time, the time sometimes when you don't want to go out to dinner, you don't want to, you need, you know, to work on your book and this sort of stuff. I think writers understand that about each other. And I think that is what has really saved me more than anything. I keep saying saved me like I'm some kind of real lost character. I've always had real problems with depression, and it's just part of my whole gloomy, melancholy, you know, character. I know I've been wanting to go to Scotland really bad, and somebody said, you don't want to go to Scotland, it's so dreary, it rains all the time. I said, that sounds like heaven to me. It's exactly, you know, suits my personality. So humor that's the most healing thing.
In real life, do you have friends like your best friend in Sunday Life? What was her name?
Augusta.
Augusta, yeah, I love Augusta.
Okay. Question was, do I have real life friends like Augusta and Sunday Wife? I've got some great friends who are here tonight. They're all based on Augusta. Yeah, Augusta was sort of a composite of 2 or 3 women. The story, if you haven't read Sunday Wife, I won't say much more about this, except Augusta's story of an affair she had as a very young girl was told to me by a friend, an experience that very similar to the one she had. And then I had a couple of other women that helped me in my life to see that I was caught in a role that I was just playing the part and was not really, I was afraid to be myself. And so it was sort of a tribute to those women as well. I thought it was, I was about to say something that happened to Augusta in the book, but if you haven't read it, maybe I should. But I thought that was an essential part. Which, if any of you have read it, want to ask me about that afterwards, talk about it.
I'm curious about your pen. I noticed that your sister has one on just like it. Is there some significance?
The Same Sweet Girls.
Oh.
Wait, we have our pens over here. Did you forget yours, Lynn? There are a lot of honorary Same Sweet Girls. Now, those of us who are real Same Sweet Girls that belong to the original group, ours is real rhinestones. I mean, it is a classy thing that you can wear to a ball, you know. So.
I have to say this. When I mentioned your pen, my husband said he thought it meant City Southern Girl.
That's another group.
That's another group. We did wear them one time, several years ago. All of us, all the original group, the Same Sweet Girls, had on our pins and went out to dinner. And somebody walked by our table, a man walked by the table and said, what is this S55? Are we having a 55th birthday? Yeah, we were.
Since so many of the characters are built on, you know, your friends are composites of your friends and family, did they ever mind being sometimes some of the things, but
question was, people mind because so many characters so many characters in the book are based on real people. I think they all are. They're all based on real people in some ways. I have to tell you that if you haven't read the book yet, and if you know Pat Conroy, I have a character in this book based on him, so I'll let you see which one you think it is. But I think this is a risk that you take as a writer. If you write about a character that bears a striking resemblance to someone you know, they are liable to take offense. Pat's grandparents never spoke to him after The Great Santini came out. This is, I think, as a writer, if you tell the truth, then that's a risk you're going to take. And yes, I have had some people offended by that.
Are you still a recovering vegetarian?
Am I still a recovering vegetarian? I've recovered pretty well. Barbecue will do it every time. We take one more question. Okay.
Do you write in any other genres other than the one you listed basically?
The question was, do I write in other genres besides just the general fiction? I've written some. I've had some nonfiction articles published, and I want to write more nonfiction. Not a different genre, but probably what you were talking about is write suspense novels or poetry. Oh my God, I love poetry more than anything in the world. Ironically, the first thing I ever had published nationally was a poem, and I'm a horrible poet. And I am not saying that so that somebody would say, "Oh, that's not true. You're really a very good poet." Not at all. And I think the only reason this one got published is it was during Women's Lib, and it was about Eve and how she was the mother of us all, and I would have eaten an apple to Eve. Mother Eve. I think that was the name of it, actually, Mother Eve. Eve's my mother. A little more poetic. Love poetry. I'm not gifted in that way, but I have the greatest admiration for poets. Okay, we'll take this next question. I'm from Pinkard, Alabama. Normally I just say Dothan because nobody knows where Pinkard is. It's really like a community. It's not even really a little town, but it's outside Dothan. Okay, thank y'all so much. You've been great, and it was great to be here. When I opened such another door, I don't know. I could have. So it's just it's something that interests me. And it's in the place what my behind the models are. And go to intrigues just a free part. You get so just a little bit of the book and then the thing and so forth. The first narrator is Clare and out there the course there. She's talking about the retreat that she's added to the retreat that have made the retreat one controversials. The truth is the unnecessary motorist is activate the retreat I've turned it to down plot. This motorist has been significant apart from the beginning, and never intended for it to be the focus. When the book came out of a tree, so I was all Josh and goes in a view. It was there from a guy that died to them has, but is the innovative controversial.
I was called when Birmingham papers again because they were ahead with line. Divorce this Harry married and son we were reversing with their I knew I would have happened at on far